So, Dave, this is a topic that continues to get requested, and I don't want to put any of our cattle guys off to the side because we've been getting a lot of emails lately about, hey, can you do some cattle technology episodes? Talk to this guy. Hey, talk to these guys that build some innovative cattle structures. But what we're still going to get with our guest today on is focused on some new technologies in the swine world. So I promise, listeners, don't just turn this off. We're going to get to the cattle guys. We've got that stuff lined up. But there's only so many minutes in a week that we can put in your ears. So we're excited here to have two guys in studio, both Barrett and Matthew. I'm going to kind of let them introduce themselves a little bit. We've got the owner and co-founder of the company, the CEO, sitting here, as well as basically one of his right-hand men that was doing his job before he even knew he was doing his job. So it'll be kind of fun to get the story out of this. But Barrett, why don't we start with you? Who are you? What's your name? Where you're at? And what you got going on?
Barrett Eller, Director of Sales at Swine Tech, and my background is in operational improvement, strategic side of HR, and that's how I really met both Matthew and found out what pig flow is today. And so July 21, I was speaking at MPIC based off of developing a performance management system for New Fashion Pork, which is one of the top 25, I think they're still in top 25 producers today, and really focusing on how can we exceed the potential of the given resources that we have. And this is correlative to a lot of different areas of agriculture. But Matt was in that first session, and I was really speaking about performance management and execution of processes, and how do we connect that to making sure that we're executing our strategies. And he was like, hey, I'm building this. And I was like, yeah, I am too. But I had like 20 hours of like YouTube videos on Power BI. And he's like, I got guys who worked for NASA and aerospace. And I'm like, all right, you win.
So pretty easy sell.
Yeah. He's like, I was like, all right, you win. And so then, unfortunately for Matthew, he couldn't get me as a customer, but he did get me in for an employee about a year later. So.
Cool.
So,
I can't wait to get more into the
Tanner,
depth of that relationship.
I think you started this wrong. You went right to Barrett, but I'm still wondering, what are we talking about?
Oh, we're not going to get there yet. We got to get to know the people on.
I know, but we got Matthew here, and he's the man. So let's figure out what do they have, and who are you?
Yeah, so I'm Matthew Rooda. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Swine Tech. Grew up in the swine industry. Was born in Kinston, North Carolina, right in the heart of the second largest pork-producing state in the U.S. And
take note, second largest.
Yeah, and then moved to Iowa, which is the largest.
Fair enough.
My grandfather raised pigs for most of his life. My dad has raised pigs for his whole life. My grandfather did it the old-fashioned way. My dad was managing commercial operations in Oskaloosa Pella area. And then I had some background in that growing up, did a lot of odd-end jobs, did some contract vaccinations, basically touched the whole process, and was actually going to school to study genetics and biotechnology. My parents said, do something different. You can always come back to farming, but try something different. And so I went to study genetics and biotechnology to be an obstetrician. And so I was working in nursing homes and hospitals. Obstetrician. Okay. Yep, going to med school. So I went to the University of Iowa with that goal in mind. Went to the University of Iowa Medical School, talked to their acceptance committee my first year, and I said, what do I need to do to set myself apart? And they said, be different. I'm like, well, everybody's telling me to be different. I'm young. I want some direction. I said, well, what if I worked in a sow farm and was a manager for employees, performed all of the birthings, administered all the medications, all that stuff? And they said, that's exactly what we're looking for. So went and became an assistant farm manager and learned a whole lot from Dr. Peter Schneider, who was a veterinarian there, and then went and worked in nursing homes and hospitals, and I saw all these similarities, saw all these opportunities for us to elevate the quality of care in animal agriculture to that of human health. And a buddy of mine, Abraham Espinoza, and I founded Swine Tech in 2015 with that core goal. The first concept was actually using voice recognition to identify when a little pig was getting rolled on by its mother, and then alerting her to stand up to save that pig's life. And so we had about 220 million pigs a year that were dying, and 160 million of those globally are dying from getting laid on by their moms. And so we actually found this guy from Arkansas that it was a consultant at the Pentagon, NASA, Royal Air Force, had done all this stuff with IBM, just crazy. And we developed a prototype that actually allowed us to use voice recognition to hear that piglet, triangulate its location, alert the mom to stand up with wearable technology, and save its life. And that That led to behavioral trials at K-State, where Temple Grandin was an advisor to us. And if you're in the beef space, you know Temple Grandin.
Yeah.
She is a world-renowned welfare expert. She was a part of that, and until 2020, we thought we were rolling on our way with SmartGuard.
Yeah, and that's not what we're here to talk about today.
It's not.
But should we not tell our listeners what we're here to talk about just yet?
I think you should.
Oh, what? We can't tease them any longer? Okay, let's get to the basic of what you guys are all about. And then I want to go back to that story of how the two of you got connected, because there's got to be way more depth there. So first, Matthew, what is it?
So what is Swine Tech?
Yeah, so Swine Tech's an ag tech company built to empower pork producers to provide the highest quality of individualized care to every pig worldwide.
I think you said that before.
I think he probably helped write it.
That mission statement was definitely there.
You've said it before, right?
Oh, just a few times.
Just a few times.
In that goal, though, our mission is to provide the best point-of-care platform for pigs. And point-of-care is something fairly new to agriculture. But point of care is this modern understanding of providing individualized care in human health. It's this idea of using patient management systems, hardware devices, software, pulling them all together to help provide great care. And we saw this in the healthcare industry. And we follow genetics, nutrition, animal health. We follow the human health component of care in so many areas, except day-to-day operations. And so we did some research during COVID. And we found that hospitals are low-margin businesses that are labor-constrained, and quality of care is the greatest definition or defining moment of success. Administrative individuals in healthcare care about throughput, bed space, efficiencies.
Right.
We care about that in animal ag. But doctors, nurses, CNAs, they care about care. They're not focused on bed space and throughput. They're focused on providing great care. That's what we are in animal ag. Individuals working with the animals on a day-to-day basis, it's about providing care. It's about providing care at a very high level. It's not about throughput. Throughput's for administration, for management. So we saw there was this opportunity to really provide some resources to individuals in the barn to help them provide better care, help us understand what's happening, who's doing it, is it compliant, and then help management understand what's happening, who's doing it, is it compliant.
So like any entrepreneur, you saw a void in the space while you were in school. And so did you take this to a startup engine at University of Iowa and then get I'm just curious, the startup, how did it go? Tell me more about that, and then we'll get more deep into it. But you got me wondering as an entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah. We leveraged the student startup component of it. Almost as good as anybody ever has.
Okay.
When we went through this process, there was an email that said, hey, do you have a good student business idea? If so, we've got $1,500 for you. And so we walk in with 2 pieces of paper with data and a little drawing, and we win. I mean, there's people with booths and everything. We win this $1,500. We're floored. And then they invite us to be a part of their incubator program. And so we attend this incubator program, get a few $1,000s more, and then Iowa Startup Accelerator to Cedar Rapids says, we want you to come to our program. We want to give you $25,000. We're in college. Like, really? That's awesome.
That's a lot of beer money.
Yeah, what's the catch? Yeah. What's the catch? And they're like, you have to let us know within the next 24 hours, and you have to drop out of school for a semester. I was going into my senior year planning to go to med school, so that was a little interesting. My co-founder was like all about it, but I was a little on edge, decided to do it. We went through that program and really understood what it meant to make running a business full-time as a student our full-time job. It was business first, student second. So when we did go back to school, before we graduated, we actually did all night classes so that we could prioritize the day, and we all knew our teachers would hold us accountable to turning in assignments. Yeah. But the part about being a student at the time and being a student today and just entrepreneurship that was so awesome was these business plan competitions. They're everywhere. And we were really the first one to really apply to them all and run the gambit. So we competed in about 31 in the course of a year and a half, and we won 26 of them. And we won at places like Under Armour, Microsoft, MIT, Harvard, Princeton, all these crazy places where we were competing against all these schools and all these ideas that had nothing to do with animal ag, and animal ag was winning. And it was the very beginning of this whole renaissance of agriculture being tech. And it was a mix of good timing, of a good idea and passion and conviction for what we were doing.
So when
He
you
was 26-5 in competitions.
you gave your pitch. So part of that is the salesperson giving the pitch at the pitch deck. When you did that in these idea competitions, did you get seed capital money and people wanted to invest in the afterwards? Seed startup.
Yes, so through all those 26 wins that we had, we got about $350,000 in non-dilutive funding, so just free cash. They didn't even care what we did with it. We were responsible to put it towards the business, but that allowed us to get started, and the people we met at those events ended up being some of our seed investors.
Gotcha.
So we were able to go raise a little over $1 million and turn it into a real business.
So do you think your business would be where it is today without the startup engine?
I don't think so. I don't think it would be where it is today because of the cost that goes into hardware. When you are developing something in hardware, those startup costs are so steep, and you really can't do any proof of concept without it being rather expensive. And so we needed that to get to the investor stage.
All right, Corey, we went from med school to now we're in seed startup and entrepreneurship idea. Boom.
You guys are rolling.
We have Swine Tech. That's what we know.
Okay.
But we still don't necessarily know exactly what it is. We married the care aspect of the healthcare industry with the swine industry. But how does this function? Barrett, why don't you fill us in on product? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so main product, as Matthew mentioned too, about 95% of what we do today and what we're really truly invested on is that point of care platform, and that's called PigFlow. And how I came into it and what it really was looking at too is that what does a team in the farm need to know on not only a day-by-day basis, but a second-by-second basis as far as what's going on in the farm. How can I provide the best care possible for these pigs, no matter if I've been in the industry 16 years, 6 months, or this is my third week on the job? How do we help them succeed at the slat level? And making sure then that obviously for the ownership group, no matter what group it is, they can continue to increase and improve on profitability.
So I'm hearing this right, Tanner. They had an idea, and they made the Fitbit for pigs that tracks like all their movements so that Corey can be more profitable. Is that what I'm hearing?
So it started as the Fitbit of pigs, and then we had to pivot because we realized that in order for you to take a Fitbit for pigs where you're identifying a problem, you needed to communicate that problem to somebody. And that somebody needed to know the expectations and how they needed to respond, and then you needed to measure completion compliance. Well, the reason technology in the swine industry, and I think in animal ag as a whole, is ultimately not really moving all that quickly is because we provide all of these solutions, computer vision, wearable technology, sensor devices that tell us, hey, you have a problem. But as a caregiver, all right, I have a problem. How do I prioritize them? When do I need to respond? How do I need to respond? Was I using this correctly? So then you have this issue where companies with technologies are saying your people don't use this correctly, and technologies are saying, or people in the farm are saying technology doesn't work. So you have this huge gap, this platform need to take in information, run it through standard SOPs for the company, and then help provide direction and prioritization of tasking to employees. So PigFlow, it's about prioritizing the tasks that need to occur on a daily basis, making sure people are in the right place at the right time, and then ensuring that they actually did what we want them to do so that we can get the predicted outcomes that we knew we should receive.
So they took a place of Corey. Because that's what Corey's doing, is Corey's taking in the sensors, the alerts from the technology that he's got in his barns, and then dictating to staff what needs to be priority number one, priority number two, when he's not there to do it himself.
Absolutely. We're letting Corey basically log on and say, within all of these alerts that could come in, what is the priority? What is the expectation? And instead of making the manager a bottleneck to all of the alerts coming in, we can push those alerts to the person who's most able to respond at any given moment and then receive compliance information about how they're actually performing.
Yeah.
So that way you can focus as Corey on not dictating, but more so fighting fires and thinking more strategically around where we need to be going as a business.
You were going to say something.
I think we forgot a big step, and that's how it's been done.
Yeah.
So it's actually a mobile app for the employees within the sow farm. So, and I think that's a big connector we may have left out there. So before you say, oh my gosh, you have a cell phone in the farm, that's like a no-no, right? We do the phones are locked down to our app, PigFlow. And that's exactly how, and that's the channel or that path that's actually communicated to those team members.
That was a big thing for us because a lot of producers are really nervous about having phones in barns because of PETA and all these nuisance lawsuits. And so we were able to do some enterprise management on the devices so they can choose what gets on there, what can people do, what are people doing, make it easy for them. And some even allow Spotify now. So really opening up this whole new resource for people in the farm.
That's one thing I when I got into the pig industry 10 years ago, actually this April, I was with an integrator and they said, no phones in the barn, whatever. And then kind of down the road, I almost feel like that was kind of a detriment. Like, because we weren't showing the good things. The good footage. Right? The only stuff you got was the really bad stuff.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't care. I'll film TikToks in the barn or whatever. I mean, I'm going to make sure that there's not something in the background that shouldn't be there, but that's what I should be. As long as I'm doing my job, it shouldn't be there anyway.
Yeah, your biggest risk now is just dropping the phone into the pit.
And I haven't done that, and I have not lost an AirPod in the pit yet.
That's impressive.
Even though I've sent like 3 through the washing machine, and I've had one get ripped out of my ear when I took a dust mask off when I was vaccinating, didn't go through the slat.
So you guys have a software component to this that is a mobile app. Is there the Fitbit part of it, though, that is the hardware component to tell the sow when to get up, or is that just how it started? Is there a hardware component?
That's how it started, but today there isn't a hardware component. We've pulled that back until pig flow is more prevalent in the industry, and we can be more assured that when we put that device in the farm and we save a pig and we say there's an issue with that sow, that we can understand the response to that. So I think the hardware is kind of sitting on the shelf for the moment, but we are hardware agnostic. So all the smart feeding systems, the computer vision systems, we accept all that we can from them to help direct labor in the barn.
So you're like workflow management now,
Workforce
basically.
and swine management is exactly what we are.
So it's only on sow farms right now?
Only on sow farms today, but we expect to move into the GDU nursery and finisher and really flow that information, flow that direction across the entire system.
Because that's been one of my biggest complaints. And like you said earlier, that it's so slow for technology to come along is like I'm still writing my notes down on a piece of paper, but then I've done some trial work on an app where you can enter in your highs and lows, water consumption, alarms, all that kind of stuff. But yet, for the redundancy, you still have to put it on the paper. I'm like, why am I doing this? So the technology needs to come along.
Yep.
Yeah, so we've actually taken farms as big as 12,000 sows and brought them to be completely paperless. No more cards, which is kind of scary to a lot of people. I mean, you could still use the card if you want to, but we can. We can go completely paperless, no pen, and much more efficiently manage this operation.
For our listeners that don't know, and I'm one included, what paperwork do you have? I have no idea what paperwork. What paperwork does a hog? I wouldn't imagine. You said lots of paperwork.
Sure. So there's so many integrators in the industry, right? And everyone has their own set that they're trying to watch. But on my level, a wean to finish, I want to know what their daily consumption of water is, because that's something that I can tell if they're up or down, whether they're starting to get sick or whether I got a leak in the barn and I'm putting water into the pit. I want to know my highs and lows, my set point, where I want my temperature at. What else is on there? My daily deads, if I had any dead pigs, if I had to euthanize one. I'm keeping track of that because you got to manage your inventory.
I'm the guy that doesn't know. Does every hog guy do this, or is this just you because you're ahead of the game?
It's even more in depth. So even back 20 years ago when I was growing up as a kid on a farrow to finish hog farm, we had Pig Champ cards, and that's where I learned to write my numbers really well because there weren't very big spaces. And you would go in there, and so you start with the breeding cycle, and we would have an actual note card that would be hung on a wire across the back of the gestation crates with a clothespin.
Clothespin, yeah.
That would mark the sow's number, the date they were first bred, the date they were second bred, and then when they were projected to get moved into certain rooms prior to going into farrowing. Once we got into farrowing, that's how we predicted, based upon the normal gestation period of a hog, what date they were going to have their litter. Once they had their litter, then I got my Pig Champ card out and I put down her number, whoever the genetics was that went into her as the mother, plus the genetics that were either bred into or artificially inseminated into her to make this litter. Initially, how many pigs were alive, how many were stillborn, how many then got laid on, the first technology we talked about, and then how big they were at birth, how big they were at weaning. All this is on a paper card. And then that's got to go into a computer system.
So you
and then get passed on into gestation, but then it's not even over there,
right?
Because every morning you got to fill out a piece of paper inside the door that tells you the highs, the lows, and make sure that you are present for a PQA audit. You have to fill out all of your treatments by pen and paper for other Validus or PQA audits.
That's a small-time owner-operator, farrow to finish, 300 sows.
So this is how you went from pig champ to persnickety banker.
That's right. I knew my numbers.
Is that how it went? Okay, I
love
checking.
numbers so much, but that's exactly what they're replacing is the process to know that I didn't know right away that, oh, crap, she just had her litter. I need to go get her card, and I need to record who's alive today.
So now this is this compliant to all the integrators then? So if Corey works with XYZ company, then he doesn't have to do paper anymore. That's what you're telling me.
It should be compliant to all the integrators. It would meet all of their compliance standards because we are PQA Validus and all those approved. If you are a contract producer, sometimes you have to get certain technologies approved by the company in general.
Gotcha.
But it's even more than just getting rid of the paper.
Okay.
It's understanding when this sow begins to farrow, and I've checked on her. She just had 2 pigs. How many minutes until I need to get back? Mm-hmm. Based on her history, based on her current production. If I have an animal that I need to go move pigs to, if I need to move pigs, where should I put them? Right now on that card on the back, you have her full history. And so you need to infer from that history, is she going to be at risk? Is she going to be a good mother? Can she handle this situation?
Right. Can she support more pigs? Can she? Yeah.
Everyone's going to infer from that card differently. Everyone's going to have a unique take. But with the manager's help and PigFlow, we can automate those processes so we infer less and we just do more. We spend more time focusing on the pigs and less time trying to infer from the back of a card when and where should I do this.
So how about AI learning process? There's got to be some kind of AI in here that's saying the last 10 times we did this, we got X, and now we need Y.
Absolutely. The AI capabilities with this workforce and swine management combined are just out of this world.
I just love the aspect.
GPT.
Yeah.
Pig GPT. Yes.
We just took that.
I love the aspect of this because as a kid, Dad's the one that called the shots. So if you didn't have Dad there, like you said, I had to infer from the information that I had. We're talking back in the day to where in order to call Dad in the house, we had a phone in the office of the barn. You would call the landline phone number, hang it up, and wait till it stopped ringing, hoping somebody in the house picked it up and you could talk to each other on your own because you didn't have cell phones. Now you've got a whole bunch more technology available, but at that time, correct. She's got 2 pigs. It's been 30 minutes since I checked on her. Maybe I need to reach in and see if something's stuck. I need to pull a pig. But if you're between shifts, this, I assume, allows whoever comes in to be like, oh, crap, she only had 2 pigs 45 minutes ago.
Yes.
She still only has 2. We've got an issue.
Yes. So outside of having the workflows of the reproductive flow, freeform task management, we also have chat for communication. Mm-hmm. So we can speak in over 50 different languages back and forth with employees. They can communicate about the flow of the farm. And like you said, when somebody comes in and they're late to work or they in a different shift, they know exactly where they need to be without having to go run and find somebody because they can either chat for advice or hop right in.
Tanner, I got to pause this right here. For those of you listening, I'm looking at Corey and his head is just spinning right now with questions. Being an operator, having your own swine operation, you got a question in your head. I can see it. What?
I don't have a question. It's just like, it's more of a statement of like, this is so important because the pig industry has gotten so vertically integrated, right? When Tanner was doing it before, even if you didn't get it right on the Pig Champ card, like you probably were there the day before, the hour before, like you knew you were getting it done right. Now there's not as much ownership, right? So that's employees, it's people. I'm a contractor, or I don't own the pigs, I just own the barns, right? Like, so like there's redundancy that needs to be done. It's a checks and balances from making sure I'm doing my job and you making sure that I'm doing my job, right?
Absolutely. Could you talk, Barrett, about how pig production today is far more complicated than it's ever been before?
Yeah, you look at, and you just mentioned like the pig GBT, which now we're taking. So,
I'll take
the amount of knowledge,
Slater,
and we were even talking about just the cost of entry and what that looks like, not only from a technical expertise, but then also financial investments, those sort of things. And we spoke a little bit about the consolidation that's going on in the industry right now. But in order to continue to exceed and remain profitable, that's becoming further and further. It's kind of like when you make those great gains, whether it's in business or a certain hobby or whatever your goal is, you're going to get really far, and then all of a sudden you get to that 80, 90%, and then it gets really incremental in the decision-making and how you can continue to improve. And what we're trying to do is look at how do we make those in the farm. You could say I can't take new trick or old dog new tricks, but it's like, what if we can give old tricks to new dogs? How can we begin doing that? And if I'm 6 months into the role, I didn't grow up on a hog farm. Matter of fact, the closest thing I ever was, just as far as a sow, was at the Iowa State Fair. Mm-hmm. And then I got put in a new fashion pork, and I had 11 gilts running past me at like full speed. So there were like nice knee busters there. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how do you help me not only come into the job, feel welcome, but then how do you help me continue to succeed in that role? And Pigflow really helps close that gap for producers. And we can segue into the labor constraints today and a lot of different areas from that standpoint. But it's all about how do we put them in the best position to succeed within those limited opportunities to, even enter or succeed now in the role.
Yeah, with producers today, when we think about where the industry is, pigs are producing twice as many pigs as they did 30 years ago. Yep. Most managers can no longer speak fluently with their workers, with their employees. The technology gap that now exists because of technologies coming in the industry is a challenge. When we look at new people entering this industry, they also didn't grow up in ag. So there's no ag background. Pigs are producing twice as much, so it's a far more complicated situation. You have to learn new technologies to solve new problems you didn't even know existed. And so just ag in itself is just far more complicated than it's ever been before.
And I think one thing that I've been in ag since 2013. That was with DuPont Pioneer, and that was a whole different field in new fashion as it is Swine Tech today. But in agriculture, there is such an emotional attachment to your job. And as we continue to come away from the farm, and I wasn't like Matthew, and fewer people are, there's an emotional attachment that the care I give to this sow today, I know eventually my family is going to profit weeks down the road. If I'm coming in, I don't have an emotional attachment, number one. Number two, I don't understand the concept. I'm going to work really hard today for weeks on end to maybe hopefully cash that out in weeks to come.
So, question for you. Tanner has been trying to get me to invest in hog buildings, and I'm like, well, I really don't know anything about it. I have no idea how to manage this. I don't even know what I'm doing. Does your program help? You said people are removed from agriculture that are getting in. Well, I'm not removed from agriculture. I just don't know enough about swine to get into this. But Tanner says this might be a good investment, that maybe I should do it, and it's a good return over time. If he's telling me that, I'm still, I don't know. I don't know who to hire. Don't know what. Is there any part of your software that helps me as an outside investor?
Yeah, so as an outside investor, are you talking about trying to figure out or learn the industry, or operate successfully and profitably as an investor?
I'm for profit.
All right. So it does help producers be more profitable because we all have investments that we make into resources. Genetics is a big one of those. And the industry today, the 50th percentile of producers, are leaving about $563 per sow per year on the table in losses due to mortality and turnover. So we need to save more pigs, and we need to get people engaged. That's the problem.
What was that number?
$563 per sow per year. Your 90th percentile is losing $330. And your biological limits are probably around 190. There's certain pigs you're never going to save, and there's certain inefficiencies that are just a part of business, part of raising pigs. But if we can close the gap and elevate that 50th percentile to that 90th, if we can maximize the potential we've already paid for in that genetic stock, it's just, there's a lot of money being left on the table. And so when we think about being more profitable, it's do more with the resources you're already investing in. Do more with the feed and water going into every sow. Do more with the buildings you're putting together. Do more with the genetic stock that you're paying for, the vaccinations you're putting into the animal, the nutritionist you hire, the veterinarian you hire, the people you staff. Just do more with what we already have.
There's
Sounds familiar.
so many similarities to just row crop farming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Like, the potential of a bag of corn. And then last week at a meeting, I learned that the potential of a bag of beans actually might be more than the potential of a bag of corn. But it's all about the resources that you get and making the efficiencies. And doing more with what you can or what you have instead of just having more sows or more acres. Yep.
We can't as producers control genetic progress, right? That has been outsourced. We now work with companies that they focus on that. You can't control the weather, but you can control the care you provide to your pigs. And if we provide consistent care, we can be much more profitable than what we are today.
Okay, so we're 30 minutes into this conversation, and a big majority of our listeners don't own sow farms.
Yeah.
Okay, don't employ people on sow farms. May never get a chance to invest in a sow farm. But there's more to the technology that you guys have than what it's currently doing. There's a pretty bright future ahead of this. But this is the Farm for Profit podcast, and we try to get it to a point to where our listeners can pick something out of every episode, whether they got cattle or not, whether they have hogs or not, whether they're ever going to invest in a sow farm, and do something in their operation. So you took, Matt, a technology that is common in the medical field. Mm-hmm. Any nurse can walk in and take care of any patient because of the record-keeping software that they have.
Yep.
Now your pig flow allows the same thing to happen for any type of worker.
Yep.
We did an episode a couple weeks back on H2A labor and how that process works to where if we are struggling to find help, we can get additional resources to provide that help because you're not eliminating people. The human component still goes into this. So as you think about that, for our listeners, the bulk of our listeners, what you guys are doing, how does it affect the majority?
So to lead in, I want to pass it to Barrett on this one, but to lead in, when we think about individuals who are listening from the crops or the finishing side of pork production, which is probably much more of listeners, a lot of marketing is out there saying we need to figure out how we can manage these barns without ever having to walk in them. When we think about what the customer is asking for, that's not what they want. They want to make sure that a person has been in that barn every day. So when we look at technologies, computer vision, sensors, we need to be cognizant that we're likely always going to have to be involved. There's always going to be a caregiving component where a person is going to have to finish the last 10%. Yeah, technology can do a lot, but we're still going to need to be there. And there's not a lot of opportunity in finishing to once you're at the barn, once you're physically in the barn, there's a box, there's check boxes you need to get taken care of. And you can't do that necessarily without a person. And so when we think about the investments we're making in our finishing facilities, if you always consider I'm going to have to be there every day, you can start to narrow down what are the areas of opportunity. What are the things I don't need to be doing every day? Well, I do not need to be randomly running out to go check bins. I don't randomly need to go out to resolve alarms if there's other ways that I can be doing this. So the caring of the pigs, I don't think there's a lot of opportunity there to get you out of the barn day to day. But there's so many other areas. And then, Barrett, if you could just kind of talk about that concept of operational excellence. And you worked a lot on the finishing side, too, trying to figure out the logistics. And you did a lot with Brad there.
Yeah, and I think, so general question being is what can everybody take away from this? And it's oversimplified, but I was raised by a Depression-era grandfather. And so, but he said, find out what actions you need to do to move the needle the most, get really freaking good at them, and do them tomorrow, and then the next day, and the next day. And depending on what size of business you're in or whatever role you're in today, is don't lose sight of that. Do the boring things and do them consistently to maintain that high floor. And so what we work with producers or either in row crop, whatever it is what is going to move the needle the most within that process or within this business, and how can I most make sure that those are the quality and the consistency of that action that's going to move the needle the most, like that is consistent, that's a straight line throughout the year. And that's going to, think about from a swine industry, health blurbs, right? Then all of a sudden, if we have a health issue in a sow farm or in a finishing flow, like it's going to dip for quite some time. And then we can never really overachieve that. But if we could stay consistent on a high floor and and with the constraints of labor and that revolving door is identify within your processes, how can you almost solidify that to where it's like, if we turn this position over twice this year, how can I help that time to productivity where that person's going to come in, be successful, and we're not going to be playing catch up for the next 4 or 5 weeks if they leave.
It's variability.
Yeah.
It's reduce. There are things we can control. There's variability out there that can be controlled. Get rid of the variability. Get rid of the things in the fires you really shouldn't ever have to fight because it's the same thing every day.
So
when we're inconsistent, results are going to be inconsistent.
I got a question / challenge / rant.
Go for it.
All right. So every time I call in to GoDaddy, okay, we're talking computer systems, they say, please enter your customer code number. Yep. All right, here it is. Go in. Then I finally get an agent on the phone. They said, hey, what's your customer number? I just entered it in the doggone phone. So you have a process here that, okay, that's supposed to communicate between everybody. There's still human error. I went to the doctor the other day. You got to have a pre-op physical, okay? And then I'm going to go talk with my general physician who already knows my signs, symptoms, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, got to go there first. And then we're going to go to the specialist. I get in the specialist office. What do? Hand me a paper. What are your symptoms? How do you not know what my symptoms are? It was all entered into Epic, the program that you all have connectivity to, from that office to that office to that office. There's still human error in that. Well, why didn't you guys just read the dang software? I know that the other doctor put in what my symptoms were before I came to the specialist. Otherwise, you wouldn't even know why I was here.
So this is good because this is a huge problem in ag, and it's the fact that all of these systems that should connect to one another aren't connecting to one another. You have it in healthcare where Epic Health doesn't want to work with other systems, and they're trying to figure that out, and it's taken 15, 20 years. But in ag, it's a mindset of scarcity. It's a mindset of scarcity and not of opportunity. And so when companies get in and they get a foothold somewhere, they want to do it all. But doing it all can't be done quickly. And so you have all these companies that are in their own little areas that if they all work together, hell, we'd be at a whole nother level.
So we're not open source. We're not Google with API availability for everybody.
Not yet, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
It's scary because we don't want somebody who's bigger than us with more resources than us to have information to how we're doing it better than they are, because they may squash us. They may completely squeeze us out. And I think that's might be an interesting thing to segue into. And then I know Corey's going to have a slew of questions, but what the future of the industry looks like. I mean, we're talking integration now at levels that we've never seen before.
Yep.
Mergers and so far. But why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Right. Yeah, so I think in the 1970s, you look at the food industry and what that looked like. I think there's 20 plus companies that controlled the food supply. Now there's 4. If you really look at that diagram and how that's summed up, and there's been some acquisitions and mergers within the swine industry here as of late, and it's going to be a very interesting time. If you're looking at that top 40, you see a lot of last names and faces that are tied to them, and it's going to be interesting on how do we help those, not only those families succeed, but then for myself, I was at New Fashion Pork. Like the swine industry to me was the top 40. Like this is it. Keep in mind, I just went in 2015. So but now I'm getting to work with the producer who's got 1,000 sows. And, he's 55 years old and he's got a son that's kind of in it. And that's how it works. How do I help him succeed and to where he can maintain that asset? It's going to help him out for a retirement standpoint. And then the son can kind of have that option, right?
Succession planning right now is an issue.
Yeah.
Producers are either trying to get out because they're not making money or they don't have succession plan in place that's going to work for their family. And so you're going to sell it off to the asset that pay the best price, and that's where consolidation's taking place. We have a lot of the pioneers of the swine industry in that 60 to 75.
How much of that is functionally obsolescent facilities?
Some
less,
of it.
Less than what you think.
Yeah, it's not. It's just some of it.
I think a lot of the building that has gone on the last couple of years has been sow facilities, hasn't it?
Yep.
Because the finishers does not cash flow right now with where materials are.
Well, what's the cost of a finisher been in the last few years? Is it
over 400,
yeah,
425. I've heard some people talk 450. It's like I don't know how. I mean, pushing notes back to I don't know what. Have you done a hog barn for a while, Tanner? 20 years, something like that?
Well, I'm under the philosophy that it needs to pay in 15, otherwise I advise against. So no, I have not done a hog barn loan in in a couple of years.
And 15's
Yeah,
even
it's been
long
hard.
because
Yeah.
it used to be 8 to 10.
Yep.
And some of these gestation barns, they're getting up to $15 million that I was hearing for building a big gestation barn. So they're getting really expensive. But also, like when we think about the future of where the industry is going, you got to figure international. Because this is the first time in swine production history where individuals are all competing for the exact same employees, because it's now a global supply of talent, whether it's the Philippines, Ukraine, Mexico. But Europe, do they even want to raise pigs? Do they even want to raise cattle? They're exporting their carbon footprint to Brazil. But Brazil right now is also having an issue with getting the fertilizer inputs it needs from Russia. China right now is in a population crisis, and they're trying to figure out ASF, and things are backsliding. South America has political unrest, which is going to hurt its growth. The U.S. can't really grow much more. So where is growth going to come from? If we're going to feed the world and it's not from efficiencies, but it's from building barns?
Petri dishes.
Yeah. Yep.
Kanye meat.
Kanye meat. Is that what we're going to call
Have you
it?
shared that?
Sorry, I had to
You can
like
literally
did
grow.
one?
They can, yeah. Kanye, like you can take a piece of a strand of his DNA and grow his own meat.
his flesh.
Oh, that's messed up.
Yeah,
He
Very.
needs to go back to shoes.
yeah.
That's commercial cannibalism.
It is,
It is. There's big issues.
but it's branded.
Oh.
Yeah. There's big issues with that.
Tanner, this is what I heard. This is my note on my paper. $563 per head per year. That's how we be profitable with this current product that's out there.
The opportunity cost.
That's the opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah, and the biggest thing I want to relate to all of our listeners is
Per sow per year, not per pig per year.
There you go.
Yeah.
no, good clarification.
Yeah.
But for all of our listeners, it provides a lot of insight into the industry and where the future of livestock production is going. Because we have to think about, even if we're only a row crop farmer, we can make our tractor drive straight lines or follow an adaptive curve. It can even potentially, if you've already invested in the technology, farm autonomously for you. But there is still a workflow that somebody is putting together on the row crop side that is making all of this function.
Yep.
And this could be a step, knowing that there's somebody in the hog industry already doing this, that is going to help lay the groundwork for every other industry amongst agriculture. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know people in row crops that are focused on this. Is how do you help people with multiple assets ranging from corn and soy and pigs and poultry? How do you help take the few employees you might have and the more you might have during planting and harvest to put people in the right place at the right time? That's more of a macro level of management as opposed to the micro level of management we focused on. But this whole concept of workflow management and optimization, it's hitting all of ag.
So we also encourage our listeners to diversify, whether that's investing in a couple of townhomes or that's investing in trading platforms, or that's potentially now being comfortable investing in a sow facility that would adopt this type of technology in which you can feel comfortable monitoring progress and monitoring productivity without having to be the expert. Not encouraging Dave to not do homework and figure out what he's going to do before investing in a sow herd, but maybe using a tool as such, making sure that it's even available, could help make sure you're doing a wise investment.
But I just installed solar this year, and I can even manage that from an app on my phone to make sure that, hey, are we producing what we said we were going to? What's the rate of return, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that'll help. We think of, Iowa dairy guy, Farmer Dan. He's got Lely robots. I mean, the dairy industry has already gone there to assist with labor crunch on that.
They're the leaders right now.
So if they're leading that, so they've adapted to technology a lot more than I thought they would. What are we in 10 years? So what does Corey's barn look like 10 years from now?
So Corey's barn 10 years from now probably has computer vision, monitoring the behavior and health of animals, probably automatically identifying which ones need assistance. So when you walk in the barn, you know exactly what do I need to fix, what do I need to... It's probably automatically adjusting the environment, so you probably don't have to worry about the environment. You're probably playing more maintenance than anything. Maintenance and responding to care issues. And that's probably telling you exactly which pigs in the barn need to be sold and when. Even if you're not using a scale barn, you probably are knowing exactly when you need to sell them. And potentially it's optimizing the logistics of scheduling of trucks between all of your facilities to know, all right, these pigs actually, they didn't get sick, so they ended up being 3 days ahead of this farm that should have been 3 days ahead of it, vice versa. So It's going to be logistics. It's going to be care. It's going to be maintenance. It's going to be environment. It's going to be everything.
All managed by a workflow software.
Corey,
Correct.
does that save you people? Like, did you just eliminate 3 jobs? And I say eliminate in a good sense that it maybe saves you money, but then the naysayer would say you're eliminating farm jobs that is out there, but efficiency.
You can't say that anymore because no one wants to work.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I don't know if it would take any because I feel like I'm doing most of that currently, but it would definitely free up my time.
So you could have a 20/20 job. Like every kid in 2020
I'm working from home
works
today.
one job and works from home, and then they work another job on the side as a social. All right, fair enough.
I mean, yeah, if I could log on to my computer or have a software that's actually telling me the pigs that are ready for market instead of me going through there and that one looks big enough, I'm gonna put a mark on him and then go sort them out later, and that would be nice.
It's probably not as much time. Time's a component, but you're going to find what is the principle, the constant. When you're given extra time, you're going to find a way to fill it.
Oh, is it Peterson's or Parkinson's
Yeah,
law?
Parkinson's law.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you're going to find a way to fill your time. However, if you can send the right pigs to market at the right time, if you can treat them more proactively, if you can keep the environment optimal, you're going to have a better rate of gain. You're going to get more profitable return on the pigs you send to market. So it's just going to be doing a better job of farming in general.
What I could see it could separate me out from other producers that maybe doesn't have that technology. So if we're like, say, space is very available, like, there's empty hog barns sitting out there. Someone might actually stay with me, keep pigs in my barn because I'm way more efficient.
So you have value
than the
add.
next guy down
Value
there.
add to get more contracts.
Or if if all the space is filled, I might be able to get paid more because it's at a premium because I'm producing a pig way more efficient. We use less feed to gain more pounds.
Better care.
Carbon credits, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And
Tanner, do you think
consumer.
that they could charge more? Could Corey charge more for doing this? Or is it an industry standard of what he gets charged? Like, I'm thinking
Yeah,
value add of a customer. They can say, they know what they're worth, I know what I'm worth, and I have better technology.
I don't
Not yet.
I don't think we're going to get
It might
to
give
that
you a
point
little
for
leg up in
while.
some
Yeah.
some negotiations, but
The other
pig
interesting
space
part
has not been raised in the 10 years I've
Really? Okay,
yeah,
fair
I've
enough.
been in.
The other interesting part is just when you talked about what the future, the 10 years is going to look like. We went into a pandemic in which we saw a lot of supply chain disruption. And part of that was we didn't know where the big pigs were. And then unfortunately, some had to be euthanized because they got too big or slaughter was just backed up because we couldn't staff. I mean, if it's integrated, just like you said, you know that these pigs are X weight. Okay, we might be able to slow feed down in order to keep packing space, shackle space flowing based upon less available labor for that side. I mean, it's not going to completely stop an issue like we had with the pandemic, but if something like that happened in the future and we've got a workflow in place that's monitoring and helping with the logistics, it would probably make those issues a little bit more minimal.
Possibly. It could help potentially. I don't want to get too ahead of the skis there, but it could potentially help with the response, especially if you in 10 years are having AI drive some of those decision making. Maybe it's helping you think faster in a crisis situation. So when you think about crisis management, it's all about how quickly and swiftly you can make a decision. So potentially during a crisis, you can make better decisions.
And then I want to get back to one of the comments that you made just about the welfare of the animal and what the consumers are driving. You said the consumer wants you to be in there petting them with a brush and showering them with apple-flavored soap because they want to show that you cared for this animal. Even if they're going to eat it, because there's some that won't, they want to know that that animal was taken care of properly. The animal care part is still really important to this.
Yeah, it'll be an upward fight for the industry to convince consumers that having computer vision take care of the animals all by itself for days on end without human intervention as being the right thing. And that actually surprised me when we found that out. Just the consumer doesn't want technology manufacturing pigs. They look at that as manufacturing, technology making pigs. They want somebody to be there, somebody to know that they can hold that pig if they need to hold the pig. It's a little bit touchy-feely, but a lot of the intervention, unless you got drones with syringes going and treating pigs and moving them and sorting them between pens to keep things going well, I just don't see how in finishing you remove the person checking the barn on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Sow farm, you do have opportunities to make more efficient use of labor and potentially do more with less people, but I don't think in grow finish that future exists in the next 10 years.
Yeah, and then you hit on the labors piece about, we're already not finding people to work, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like the swine industry or different areas of agriculture is cutting jobs. However, we're doing something that is a level of redundancy, but it's based off of emotional decision making. Because we can understand what hiring an employee is. Let's look at this from like a financial investment, right? Is I can turn over my 10 employees, almost 100% of them on the year, which is of average $4,100 for every employee I turn over. And then if you look at the amount of knowledge they can take in to do the job is between 5% at a lecture, 30% as a video, right? People are extremely inefficient, but we understand them. And so we don't want to be sold a piece of equipment, but that piece of equipment doesn't call in sick. And yes, every now and then it can need some maintenance, but it's going to be there 24/7. It's not going to quit on you. So we need to help, and it needs to be a cohesive relationship between vendors and producers. And then actually, when Matt hired me to be the director of sales in May, I think one of my first comments was like, I don't know about sales. And he's like, why? I was like, because like swine industry, they don't like sales guys. and I don't want to be a sales guy. He goes, that's exactly why I'm hiring you, because you're not a sales guy. I was like, thanks, Matt. And so,
Thanks for the confidence, Matt.
right. But the big thing is that understand the relationship between if we want to be at a level of profitability where we want to be at in 10 years, it needs that talking back and forth between somebody who does have the resources and can help that. You got to tell them as a producer, here's the problem I'm having. Let's solve that together. I mean, we work with a lot of great producers today that is fairly large and of size, and then obviously smaller family-run operations. But they're extremely successful because they say, hey, Matt, Barrett, Abe, any one of our engineers, like this is the problem we're having. Help us solve it.
Any of their vendors. It's the producers who speak up and say, hey, here's my problem. Can you help me solve it? And truly embrace the partnership model that a lot of these companies distribute with. It helps.
Yeah, and those that hide because they feel like they're being sold, like unfortunately, the next 10 years is going to be getting harder and harder
because they're falling behind. Like to kind of wrap some stuff up here. When you think about profitability, we have always looked at profitability as a cyclical model of welfare, sustainability, and profitably. If we can take care of the animals and keep more of them alive, and we can be more efficient with those animals, with our inputs, we're going to be more profitable. And so with the consumer barking about welfare and the world barking about sustainability, the answer to how we are more profitable as an industry is we embrace those concepts and figure out how we can make them work for us. And if we make them work for us by saving more pigs and being more efficient with our inputs, we're likely meeting all of the demands of our consumers, at least the ones who truly do want to eat our pork or beef or corn.
Yeah, we won't be able to control that, but we can hopefully control those that are interested in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Corey, you got anything before we...
4 things.
All right, fire away.
How do you guys get paid? Is it like a per sow fee, per pig fee, one flat fee, yearly subscription? What is it?
Well, there's a couple different components, but I would say the primary is going to be that per sow, and that's the subscription cost of pig flow. And so that's on a month-by-month basis, so it's 50 cents a sow a month.
Okay, which at $563 of opportunity cost sounds pretty dang cheap.
Yeah, it's typically $6 a sow a year, 50 cents a sow a month, and most of our producers are bringing in 20 to 30 per sow per year back in returns.
Yeah.
We even had one producer who was able to see an extra 3.5 pigs per sow per year, which is insane. And for anybody listening, nowhere near a guarantee.
Yeah.
But getting a half a pig to a pig back per sow per year is very attainable. And so, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1 return on investment.
So what about timeline? When can I expect it on a wean to finish, feeder to finish level?
Within the next couple of years.
Couple of years. Gotcha. And then you can't sell it to me, then you got to sell it to the integrators that are controlling my pigs, right?
Not necessarily. So there's actually been some interesting conversations around business models that would actually allow it to go vice versa, where the integrator or the contract grower can have a little bit more say in that, and yet still not cross the boundaries that have been set by the integrator.
Gotcha. And then I just had one just kind of random question. You might be working on it, maybe you're not. If you could change one thing about the pig industry that's, say we're 10 years down the road, what needs to be changed?
I got mine. You go.
I got mine.
You go first.
Wow, this is not edited out. That was instant.
Yeah. People are the solution, not the problem. That's the mindset change. If we could all start looking at our people as the solution and invest in them as such, as opposed to look at the people as the problem and try to go around them as such, we're going to change in a big way. And the producers today that I've seen being the most successful invest in their people as being the solution for the future, as opposed to vice versa.
I would say, and I've got a storyline in mind, so you're not a sports fan.
Not as much.
But you've
Nope.
definitely seen a baseball box score.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? The swine industry today is okay with seeing, like, we won 4-3, and that's enough information. We don't know who did what. We don't know to what level. We don't know to what quality. We just know we either did good or not on the market, right? And so therefore, we need to get over that hurdle and ask the question of what is going on. So if we have a production strategy, if I'm pouring money into vaccinations and treatments, where is that going? What is the return? What's actually being done? And how can I verify that? That's absolutely got to happen.
Oh, one just popped into my head.
Go for it.
What about the California crap going on?
So Prop 12.
Yeah.
Prop 12 is going to be very interesting for our market. There's a lot of optimism that the Supreme Court will not allow it to go through. But even if it does go through, there's a significant portion of facilities today that are built to be compliant with Prop 12. I think that's going to lead to differentiation in the market. I think it's going to allow for producers to be able to get different agreements put in place, different contracts put in place that helps them think a little bit more differently going
For our
forward.
listeners that don't know what Proposition 12 is, just give a little. It's probably a whole nother podcast, but just give a little snip of like what is it? Because
So Prop 12 was a ballot initiative out of California that suggested that pigs need to be raised 24 square foot of space. They needed to be only locked into breeding stalls for a select few hours. And it just put a whole lot of constraints on how you manage your herd, and few of them were scientifically based. They kind of
Cage-free.
overshot a lot. Yeah, they overshot a lot of what Europe is already doing. They didn't really follow much research, and so it's one of those situations where if the producers could have been at the seat of the table to figure out how do we move forward to supply California more effectively or to what they want, we would have come up with rule sets that were going to be better for producers and meeting the needs of the consumers. But because this was a ballot initiative, there's just things in there that do not make sense. There was one that actually came out of Colorado that got denied, but they wanted to make it a law that an animal had to reach 50% of its life before you could kill it. So we're talking 3-4 years on a pig before we could actually send it to market if that was to go through. So we've got a lot of these really weird things that are being proposed, and if we're not vigilant as producers, as growers, and we're not talking to the senators and the representatives in Congress, if we're not stating our claims and we're not speaking up, we could potentially get bit by something really dangerous here.
Here's another one for you, Dave. This was my Ag with Emma segment. I got it out earlier. What's the gestation of a sow?
I don't know.
3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days.
Yeah.
Have you guys
3
shortened that up?
It is shortening to the point where it might not be accurate
Yeah.
here in a little while. It might be 332, but 333 is still the common term in the industry right now.
That's our Ag with Emma.
Ag with Emma.
Yeah, but she does the 4356.
Yeah,
We could do that with the pigs. So,
333.
and then you might need to sell them your technology that you had on the old.
I know.
Yeah,
I was
they'll
waiting to
tip it.
I was waiting to talk with him about it just a touch. So,
That might not be a bad name for a company in gestation, right? We're 333. What's 333? We get your pigs bred and we get them to have piglets.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, this is good, guys. This has been a pleasure. We went down a lot of different little rabbit holes, but ultimately got some exposure to some really neat technology in the livestock industry that is going to set the way for probably a lot of different opportunities throughout agriculture. So it's been fun to have you guys in studio. I'm going to summarize a little bit, but we ask all of our guests the same question because all of our guests are experts and their perspective is valuable. What does success look like to you? And I'm not just talking for Swine Tech. This is deeper than that. What does success look like or mean to you? But listeners, we were here hanging out with Barrett Eller and Matthew Rooda. I didn't even ask if that's how you say it.
So it's Rooda. Yeah. So Matthew Rooda.
Professional podcast host right here. It took us until the hour-long mark here.
Most people get it wrong, but it's a Dutch last name. And so I think the only thing that's got it right the first time is somebody from the Netherlands, where my hometown is, or the parking meter in Amsterdam. So.
So two guys here with Swine Tech telling us about their technology. We worked and gone through how they adapted it, where their history came from, medical industry, hog industry, married together, put together, and created PigFlow. PigFlow helps us manage and monitor that process that goes into the swine herd, in specifically related to gestation and farrowing.
Yes.
There's ways and room for this to expand here in the next couple of years, but it is a point of care platform that helps us monitor the day by day. It's a good perspective, they said here, is allows us to do more with the resources that we have and the resources that we invest. So really kind of cool exposure here to a new technology that hopefully all of you listeners pick something out of this show that's going to bring value to your farm, or at least provide value to the conversation at the coffee shop. So we appreciate them sitting in here. But guys, what does success look like to you? Barrett, you got to go first.
Oh, son of a gun. Because you can interpret this in so many different ways, right? So, as I mentioned, and he's still around, still one of my best friends, 85 years old, right? Depression era, farmer, retired from John Deere. And he said, God put you on this world for one intent, but he left you up to chase for it. So even if you never reach it, whatever he put you here for, he put that message within you, just go chase it.
Go chase it. So success is just continuing to pursue it.
Yep. With whatever that dream is.
Nice. Matthew?
Yeah, mine goes a little biblical as well. It's making the most of the gifts God has given me and the blessings that I've been given, make the most of that opportunity to make an impact. I think success for me is whether I am in the industry 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. When I die, I hope to look at the industry and see it as a successful industry, and one that I had a part in helping get there.
I like it. Corey, you get to challenge everybody for
Got
today.
it. It's pretty easy. Everyone says eat beef. I'm just going to say eat pork. Go out, buy a dang pork chop. Eggs are freaking $5 to $10 a dozen. Listen, you can't go egg someone's house anymore. You go buy the pork chops and throw them up on the doorstep.
Don't overcook your pork. That's the last message here. Don't overcook your pork.
145.
And if you're doing a pork chop, something new to try, I had a Brazilian buddy teach me this. Just a little bit of salt and lime.
Ooh,
Put the salt on there. Let it absorb. Grill it to the right temperature, and then put some lime on it afterwards, and you got yourself something pretty tasty.
Margarita pork.
Good.
I love some
There you
pork.
go.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out. But before we send you off, how can they learn more about Swine Tech?
So listeners can visit us at swinetechnologies.com or pigflow.com. They can also see us on our LinkedIn page, Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter. You can find us everywhere. And if you want to learn more about the swine industry and all the ins and outs, we also share a weekly podcast called Popular Pig. So you can listen to us on the Popular Pig podcast.
I love it. Gentlemen, thanks again for coming in studio. Listeners, thanks for listening to us. And until next time, have a good one.